Let's begin with a structural overview. Welcome to another lecture. Today we consider Don Nelson, five-time champion with Boston, coach, executive, and in essence, a walking laboratory for basketball innovation. I am Alexei. It is worth noting that Nelson did not merely win games. He altered the geometry of the sport.
Hello, I'm Priyanka. I'm Professor Alexei's teaching assistant. I'm excited to learn why so many coaches still borrow Nelson's ideas.
To frame our discussion, Don Nelson's career comprises two intertwined arcs. First, as a Boston Celtic, he became one of the NBA's great sixth men, dependable scorer, sturdy defender, and he hit a famous high-arcing jumper in Game 7 of the 1969 Finals. Second, as head coach and executive in Milwaukee, Golden State, New York, and Dallas, he pioneered systems that prioritized pace, spacing, and skill. He accumulated 1,335 regular season coaching wins, passed Lenny Wilkens in April 2010, and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2012. Definitions are helpful. Nelly ball refers to a philosophy that accelerates pace, stretches the floor, and hunts mismatches with smaller lineups and unconventional roles. The point forward is a forward who initiates offense. In Milwaukee, that meant Paul Pressey handling the ball so multiple scoring guards could share the floor. A run-and-gun offense pursues quick decisions and early shots. His Warriors of the early 1990s with Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin exemplified this. In simpler terms, Nelson moved the ball and the geometry faster than defenses were built to track.
So why should we care today? Because the modern NBA speaks this language. 5-out spacing, switchable lineups, and analytics-guided mismatch hunting. Nelson anticipated those norms before the three-point era fully took hold. And yet, he often argued against the grain in places where defense-first identities dominated. His ideas were not always embraced in real time.
Speaking of origins, Nelson learned to shoot at a spokeless bicycle wheel on a farm. An elegant topological circle, if you will, demanding soft touch. He attended a one-room school and then became a high school star in Rock Island, Illinois. As a pro, he developed an unorthodox one-handed free throw, leaning, hopping, and releasing with the right hand. Yet he converted nearly 77% in the regular season and over 81% in the playoffs. Results over aesthetics was a recurring theme. Chronologically, Los Angeles provided a first finals classroom, and then Boston defined him. 5 championships and the Celtics retiring his number 19. He retired in 1976 and immediately began coaching in Milwaukee, where he also served as general manager. There he won Coach of the Year in 1983 and 1985, captured 7 straight Central Division titles, and crucially elevated Paul Pressey into the point forward role. Strategic trades followed. Bob Lanier arrived, later Jack Sikma, and the Bucks remained a 50-win constant, despite the Bird Celtics and Irving 76ers blocking the path to the finals. Moving forward to Golden State, he built Run TMC, 3 guards, blinding pace, and lineups with Rod Higgins nominally at center to drag shot blockers away from the rim. He won a 3rd Coach of the Year in 1992. Not every experiment harmonized with stars. The Chris Webber standoff over positional usage ended that first Warriors tenure. In New York, his pace and space instincts collided with the franchise's defense-first culture. He even proposed exploring a Patrick Ewing trade to pursue Shaquille O'Neal, and he was dismissed in March 1996. Dallas was his next laboratory. On draft night in 1998, he acquired Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash, initially unpopular but ultimately transformative. 4 straight 50-win seasons and a 60-win peak followed, though injuries and defense limited the ceiling. He also popularized the hack-a-shack tactic, a controversial but mathematically pragmatic attempt to blunt dominant low-post scorers. He stepped down in 2005. Returning to Golden State in 2006, he engineered the 2007 upset of the 67-win Mavericks, a masterclass in matchup disruption, before advocating the 2009 selection of Stephen Curry. In 2010, he set the all-time coaching wins record, later surpassed by Greg Popovich in 2022.
Beyond the court, there is also the human thread, a fund he started in 1986 to help Wisconsin farmers, and a late-life move to Maui, where he farmed flowers, coffee, and cannabis. He moved to Texas in 2026 and passed away that August at age 86. People remembered both the maverick and the mentor.
Before we get to the complexities, a brief personal note. As a mathematician, I admire the way Nelson treated space as a variable to be optimized, not a backdrop. In chess, we say control the center to open lines. In his offenses, you could see the same principle. Relocate the least threatening piece to the least guarded square, thereby maximizing lanes elsewhere. It is elegant and pragmatic.
I think the next thing we should talk about is 3 big questions. First, historically, how did the point-forward concept evolve? Second, a counterfactual. What if Shaquille O'Neal had joined the Knicks while Ewing departed? Third, how Nelson's strategies still shape coaching today. Professor Alexei, how did the point-forward concept change basketball?
It's important to understand the constraint Nelson was solving in Milwaukee. He wished to play multiple scoring guards together without sacrificing a conductor. By assigning primary initiation to 6'5" Paul Pressey, he decoupled role from position. This produced 3 effects. First, lineups became more versatile. You could defend bigger on the wings while still organizing the offense. Second, spacing improved because traditional point guard non-shooters could be replaced by shooters or slashers. Third, defenses faced ambiguity in pick-and-roll coverage because the initiating and screening archetypes were inverted. Over time, the template normalized forwards as playmakers across levels of the sport.
Professor, could you clarify why this concept was so revolutionary at the time?
We observed that the league then was built on rigid positional taxonomies. Point guard as quarterback, center as rim hub. Nelson's move said, in effect, skills over boxes. In simpler terms, instead of asking who are my 5 positions, he asked, what 5 skills do I need on every possession? Initiation, shooting, cutting, screening, and decision-making. That reframing foreshadowed today's positionless lineups and 5-out spacing.
Professor, what might have changed if Shaquille O'Neal joined the Knicks instead of Patrick Ewing staying?
Theoretically, several cascading shifts follow. First, the Knicks' offensive identity likely pivots from post-isolations and slow tempo to an inside-out attack married to Nelson's pace and space principles, with shooters encircling O'Neal and more early offense. Second, the Eastern playoff topology changes. An O'Neal-led New York raises the ceiling against contemporaries, altering matchups and perhaps timelines for rivals. Third, league-wide ripple effects emerge. The West loses a dominant anchor while the East's defensive schemes recalibrate toward intentional fouling counters and perimeter shooting containment. None of this guarantees a title, but the expected value of deep runs increases under Nelson's system when paired with a transcendent interior force.
Professor Alexei, what would that have meant for Nelson's coaching career?
Arguably, it extends his New York tenure and reframes his legacy. The principal critique of Nelson's coaching record is the absence of a championship as head coach. A successful O'Neill era in New York could have supplied the roster fit his ideas require, aligning organization and philosophy. That alignment was often the missing variable during short tenures. We can infer from Milwaukee, Dallas, and the 2007 Warriors that when personnel matched his system, outcomes improved markedly.
Professor, how do Nelson's strategies still impact NBA coaching today?
This logically leads us to contemporary applications. Coaches now default to spacing the floor with shooting at 4 or 5 positions, a direct descendant of moving non-shooting centers away from the rim to neutralize shot blockers like Mark Eaton. The point forward is mainstream. Forwards initiate to keep multiple scorers on the court. Mismatch hunting is no longer opportunistic. It is organized into playbooks that pre-switch and force weak defenders into space. Even intentional fouling debates trace to his hack-a-shack intervention. The rules conversation became part of strategy. Finally, roster construction leans heavily toward feel, passing, and shooting. The scouting bias Nelson demonstrated when he pushed for Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, and later Stephen Curry has become league orthodoxy.
Professor, are there areas where his tactics might still be expanded?
In this context, two frontiers remain fertile. First, dynamic role swapping within a single possession. For example, centers initiating above the break, while wings set ghost screens that instantly invert matchups. Nelson's spirit, but with even more fluidity. Second, data-informed lineup microtuning. Minute-to-minute substitutions that treat pace and spacing as adjustable levers rather than game-long identities. Further research is needed on fatigue costs and decision complexity, but the principle is very much in the lineage of Nelly Ball. To summarize, Don Nelson bent basketball toward versatility, from the point forward to small ball pace and spacing, from audacious roster building to psychological game plans that produce playoff upsets. We examined three questions: how the point forward evolved and spread, how a Shaquille O'Neal scenario in New York might have altered trajectories, and how his frameworks still animate modern coaching. For those wishing to read further, study how analytics formalized what Nelson intuited, valuing space, skill, and expected value under pressure. Thank you for listening. Keep learning, keep questioning, and as always, watch the geometry.
Thank you, Professor. That was helpful to think through, actually.